boxing, no charades. Payroll baddies, ready to fire, get paid.
Welcome to the Payroll BADIes podcast. Welcome to our existing listeners and to some of our new listeners. We're very excited today to come to you with our guest today, which we're going to introduce in just a bit. Before that, just a little bit about us for the new listeners. Again, we're the Payroll BADIes, and we're about just shining a light on all the baddies out there who are making sure people get paid. Again, with a little bit bias with SAP Payroll, and if you don't like it, you know where the next button is, so get out of here. But I'm so excited today because we have a special guest, and like we always do, let me introduce them in the fight style mode. Ready?
Yes.
Hailing from Atlanta, Georgia, the chief payroll champion, market analyst extraordinaire, global payroll guru, trusted advisor to the payroll stars, the man who spent more time thinking about payroll than most of us spend sleeping, the man, the myth, the legend, the baddie, Pete Tiliakos. Well, let's give it up. Let's give it up.
Welcome to the podcast, brother.
That's the most amazing welcome I think I've ever had anywhere.
We like our guests to be very welcome, Pete. Thank you for being here.
I want to take my shirt off and weigh in now. God damn, dude. You got me fired up, man. I mean, in this outfit, dude, right now, I am so clean, I'm dirty. I'm so clean, I'm dirty right now. Man, what's up? It's a privilege. This is a privilege. I'm so happy to be here.
ATL.
That's great, Pete.
Right.
That's right. Pete, why don't you give us a little bit of intro about yourself for our listeners?
Yeah. Well, look, I'm Pete Tiliakos, as you mentioned. I am a longtime payroll practitioner, an HR practitioner. I came up I actually started my career, believe it or not, I was telling my wife this the other day. I've been in HR and payroll transformation since I was 18 years old. Wow. I started my career in the Marines. I thought I was gonna go do Marine stuff in the first Gulf War. And as often happens, the Marine Corps had a completely different plan for me. And we like to say, you don't always get the career you want, you get the career that you need or they need. And so I got stationed on Parris Island of all places, right? I went to boot camp. I went to combat training in North Carolina. I did all the Marine stuff. Went to admin school, and I came back and I got stationed at the day it opened. I have a plaque on my wall. The day it opened, the very first shared service center on Parris Island history. But possibly, I heard it was one of the first, if not the first, outside of Kansas City where the finance center is in all the Marine Corps history. Oh, wow. And at the time, I'll be honest with you guys, I thought that I had been checked into a white-collar prison. I thought that, I'm 18, 19. I thought, man, I'm going to be traveling the world. We're going to be doing Marine stuff. This is going to be so much fun. And like I said, I ended up behind a desk auditing HR data, what is ultimately HR and payroll data, for the next 3.5 years in what I thought was a white-collar prison. And, looking back, though, now it set me off on a path I could never have imagined, created a career for me that I never saw coming, and ultimately, I think really, really instilled in me this understanding of how, like what I think a lot of people don't understand about the Marines, about how different it is how small, how specialized, and how many alphas there are in that environment. The standards are high, the competition is high, it's up or out, there's just no exception. And every data point in your record is the difference between you competing with the guy next to you or the girl next to you for that promotion or that thing, right? Or taking care of your family back home. And so the meaning of those things came through to me in a way that I don't think any HR data has ever. But it taught me that this is where the rubber meets the road. Like, this is where the people feel what you're doing. And so at the time, had no idea. And I get out of the military after 4 years. I was kind of jaded. I didn't really go anywhere. And I thought, what the hell is this that I'm doing? Again, white-collar prison. I don't know. So I get out, right? I learned a lot, but I got out, and I just happened to go home to Florida. And I go to work for the largest PEO in the United States, just by accident, right? And for the next 6 years, I learned HR and payroll and benefits at scale. And I'm helping companies of all sizes, mostly smaller mid-market companies. We even helped Red Bull back in the day when they came to America. I remember that. Wow. And so it became what is now TriNet. Ultimately, the company Staff Leasing that I worked with, it was one of the first PEOs in America. And I learned an immense amount. Well, at the age of what turned out to be about 28 or 29, I found myself working at the Walt Disney Company in their shared service center they were building. It's still down the road from where we just did the Paycon in Celebration, Florida. And I helped them build that shared service center and bring a ton of work into that shared service center. And you'll love this. We put about $250 million worth of SAP software in that company across everything from HR to procurement to time and attendance. Well, time and attendance actually came later, but literally everything, travel and entertainment. The company really went all in on that. And so we helped build that shared service center around that. And yeah, man, that was kind of what got me going. And then from there, it just turned into me working for vendors like IBM, TCS, where I was a pre-sales solution architect on mega outsourcing deals for finance and HR. Back in the mid 2000s, that was the rave, right? We were offshoring a lot of things and helping transform payroll by way of cloud was new at the time. And then ultimately I ended up working for Deloitte as a consultant, and then found my way into the analyst world where I led HR and technology research for Nelson Hall, and it was privileged to lead their payroll research. I also turned on and created their entire program around HCM tech, and authored while I was there what is still the oldest and first market analysis and program market sizing for the EOR marketplace by any analyst firm. So I was very proud of all that work, and then went off and created my own firm, and now do my own thing and have my own podcast and HR and Payroll 2.0, and just out there trying to evangelize this space and help practitioners, doing research that is going to uplift the buyer and the person out there trying to live with this stuff versus maybe necessarily creating another quadrant. And I know you guys are passionate about that. I've created a lot of those, and I don't love them. So we're on the same team there.
That's the
It's a privilege to do what I do, man. I have lived a dream career that accidentally happened to me, and I'm just blessed to be here trying to connect my platform by getting the vendors of the world that I advise together with the people doing it, and see if we can build the best thing possible.
For sure. I appreciate it, Peter. You mentioning the whole thing with the analyst stuff. The funny thing is, with that whole thing, I know you and I have talked about it, right? The whole magic quadrant thing and how it's almost like a marketing tax. So Raj and I did that episode, and we called out a lot of things. You wouldn't believe, you would believe how many messages we got behind the scenes. So these people weren't liking or commenting, or, they're completely staying away from any public, acknowledgement that we said all these things, but we were getting messages left, right, and center behind the scenes. Oh man, you're so right. I got my own stories. Oh man, let me tell you about this one time, or this vendor did this to me. I mean, Raj, how many do we get? We got so many things.
Man, I'm very opinionated about this, man. I work with, I'll be honest with you, man. If there's a payroll solution on this planet that's been made that matters, I've actually probably worked with them, studied it, or revised them in some way. Let's be honest. Whether it's an HCM, FinTech, payroll, EOR, and I'll tell you, man, I do a considerable amount of go-to-market strategy work across the space with CMOs and chiefs of strategy, chiefs of product. And I'll tell you that there's a tiredness, a burnout on some of these old analyst models, these stodgy old sort of we know it all, no one can know more than us, and you either get it here or you don't get it anywhere, you're dead to us. And I think what's happened is that for the big firms, it's become marketing tax, right? You want to be a part of our world, you want to be in our ecosystem and recognized, then you've got to pay. You've got to pay. Now, I wouldn't say that's pay to play. I'm just saying that there's an irrelevance sometimes to vendors who don't engage analyst firms and bigger firms, and there's a truth to that. In if you're not there, you're not there. But there's also a certain amount of hey, pay us or you're irrelevant, right?
All right.
And I think that creates the connotation of this pay-to-play world. And the problem that I have with quadrants is look, they served a purpose, I feel like, for a period of time. But I think the problem that with them is it serves primarily the vendor. It's marketing, right? It doesn't necessarily set the buyer up to make the best decision for their unique use cases and their unique strategy and trajectory. And what I always like to tell people, because I'll say this, the most asked question of an analyst that we get asked, it happens by everybody. What is the best fill in the blank? And you can add the lane you want, whatever that is. And I always stop them and tell them there's no right answer. And if anyone gives you that answer, it's probably not right either. Because you can't buy off of what is the best. It's got to be what's best for you. So my feedback is listen, all of those firms are very well and reputable firms. I have the utmost respect for all of my peers in the HR space. My buddy Holger over at Constellation, right? Stacia over at Red Thread, Stacy over at Sapient, the guys at Gartner, right? John Kay, well, John Kay's moved on, but Ron Hanscom, all of those folks are great folks.
Sure.
They're brilliant. But one of the problems is that they're constrained by a model that sets these lanes that don't necessarily serve every buyer or every vendor. And so how do you get buyer and vendor to come together when they're looking for each other but looking past each other? And I think part of the problem are these quadrants. And I think what I try to tell buyers is, you got to think about what's best for you, but you need to use many sources of input. You should be listening to sourcing advisors. You should be listening to folks like me. You should be listening to Gartner. You should be listening to the vendor to some extent. You've got to take a lot of these things together and in context, make a decision for what's best for you. The problem, though, that I have, I'll just finish with this. The problem that I have with the big analyst firm model is in the way that it's outdated is it really is, in my opinion, very harmful to younger, smaller, up-and-coming providers, right? Their budgets get absolutely wiped out by trying to play with these bigger analyst firms that, yes, eventually maybe they will need to be involved with. But I think the idea of coming in and absolutely destroying a vendor's budget and locking them down to one thing is really, really awful. And I think that's where this marketing tax connotation comes in. And I think there's a lot of CMOs and chiefs of products that are stepping back from these stodgy old ways of doing things and saying, well, are there more agile, faster moving, forward looking opportunities for us to gain market intelligence through other lenses than just the stodgy analyst firm? So my approach to all this is I try to be an open analyst. I try to say, I don't know it all. I know you don't know it all. Let's admit that and meet in the middle, and 1 + 1 can equal 3, and we can do the best thing for the market, and ultimately we can both win. And so I do try to collaborate and have with some of my peers behind the scenes, but the bigger firms, they don't play like that. But I think that they're going through transitions too, right? Their models are shifting, and I think this is part of it. Is this type of research and still does have a quality place, but it's not the only thing. And I think in the past it's been the only thing.
So Pete, there's a lot of our listeners are practitioners. They're out making these decisions or thinking about, the next time to re-up on technology.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them, as they look forward and like maybe from their IT department, they're getting these reports sent over from some of the bigger firms or even the second tier firms, and they're confused because a lot of the categories are identically named. They have international or global in both, in multiple categories.
Which has the best color, all that too. So.
Yeah. So it's just very confusing. What's your advice to them?
Yeah. So what I would say is I would tell buyers out there on a journey, look, a lot of them are multi-generation at this point, right? Particularly with HR outsourcing and services. A lot of these folks have done this before, right? They've been burned or they've learned, whatever. My opinion is look at multiple sources of information. You should really be what you really ought to be listening to is the customers of the solutions that you're considering, right? First of all, to get to those solutions that are right for you, I think it's, use the quadrants, but also listen to maybe podcasts and analysts and other firms that are putting out content around emerging solutions that might be coming into place. Because one of the things I've seen competitive bids where the quadrant folks didn't win. Someone completely not on a quadrant that no one would have ever thought of was ideal for that customer's situation, and they won. And I think that opportunity, unfortunately, is going to come by way of good marketing. It's going to become by way of being able as a vendor to be talking to these buyers, but it's also for the buyers to cut past the marketing laden sort of pulse and look beyond that and say, what else is there available for us to solve this problem? And maybe it's not just one thing. Sometimes maybe a mix of things might make sometimes a solution and a partner make a lot of sense. So I think it's just cutting past the idea that these sort of big tentpole statements in the market and going past that and saying, let me look at some other voices and other viewpoints. And again, I would say at all costs, talk to some of your peers, talk to some folks that have used these solutions or have made these decisions. You're not the only CHRO, CIO, CTO, whatever, CFO going through this. Ask your CFO friends, what did you pick? Where did you guys land? Why? What was that like? And you might find them say, hey, well, we actually landed over in zone A when everybody else was over looking at zone Z, right? And we picked something else. So I think it's about using the full 360-degree lens of all that's available to you to make that decision.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. I mean, look, Raj and I said it on the last podcast, right? If you're an SAP shop and you have SAP for finance and SAP for payroll and you have a multinational, then it doesn't matter what that quadrant's at. You have to look at your entire enterprise and make that decision for you, right? And so I think that's an important one. And you know what? Back to that episode, this is the last thing I'll say on it. We got a lot of like messages of people like with their own stories. We got some hate too, right? There are some people that didn't like what we said and you know, they thought we were just hating on all analysts. And actually, that's one of the reasons we're like, all right, listen, at the end of that episode, we're like, listen, we're not just trying to hate on the industry, right? Yeah. And we wanted to make that very clear. And that's why we gave that call out to you of like, look, we have a lot of respect for the research that comes out of these analyst companies. We use it all the time. It moves the entire industry forward. And we are not against analysts or analyst firms or anything like that. We were just calling a discrepancy of what we saw, right? And you know, that kind of gets me to my next point of the work you're doing.
Let me just say this real quick. You got to understand, there is an entire economy. I call it the quadrant economy that revolves around this. Consultants and, you know, AR specialists and, you know, the IIAR, right? There's just all of this that is around that make money off of that, right? And I understand. But my point is, and I think you're right. There's a lot of, it's not. Analysts are misunderstood as it is. I think there's a lot of firms that are they have not matured to the idea that they should be talking to analysts, even just briefing them, right? And I think that what people need to understand is the role that analysts play and how they can help you achieve what you're trying to achieve. And again, remember, that those people coming at you are, look, I'll just tell you, man, my inbox, the last time I said something about this was months ago. There was a post by someone at the IIAR, I think it was, or something like that about how Forrester's revenues were declining. And I commented about this whole, you know, exactly what I just talked about. And I think I had half the sales force of a few of my big friends absolutely just crawling around my profile. And I try to connect with all of them. I think maybe 2 connected. But it's like, but that's a threat to them. That's a threat to the facade that this is the only way to buy. And what I think we need to say is like, look, it's just an outdated model that for whatever reason isn't adapting, and that's their choice. But you need to understand that there are lots of other great solutions in the marketplace that you need to be aware of and seek out. And some of that's going to have to be work you have to do to find them and really make a good decision, because are you necessarily getting all the options on that menu? So
let's talk about that and talk about payroll. I know you're working on the finishing touches of your payroll survey. We talked about it previously in an episode, calling attention and asking people to fill it out. Any sneak previews or tidbits you can kind of give to our listeners before the full thing drops?
Yeah, let's talk about what it is first. So the Payroll Profession Confidence Index, it's an annual survey that we're running. And this is very unique research, unlike anything you've ever seen. Fundamentally, everything in the marketplace has 2 themes. It's either lead gen led, meaning what do you have? What can we sell you? Tech, right? Tech's the only answer. And the other one is you see a lot of them come out around, a lot of research comes out around payroll, around ROI being oriented purely on a cost takeout or a headcount reduction, which is, sure, that's what you want. You certainly want to have those improvements around any sort of digital investment, but that's not where we ought to be focusing with HR or payroll right now, is trying to strip heads. We really ought to be trying to elevate expertise, right? But that's a different topic. So what we do with this research is very different for multiple reasons. One, we do not focus on all those, you know, how many people do you have and how many employees are you paying? What's your ratio? There are a million of those out there. There's plenty of research that'll tell you all you want to know about those operational benchmarks. What we're trying to do is go beyond that and go into the sentiment, the value enablement, and the relationships and the success factors, no pun intended, for the outcomes of a strategic payroll operation, right? So we have for years fundamentally done nothing but tell them it's tech. You just need tech. Make a tech investment, payroll's transformed, game over, move on to the next thing. That is not the case. And what we're trying to prove by not asking about tech and saying, we do ask one tech question. We ask, what are the top digital enablers that are empowering you and your operations? But we're more importantly asking about how they're feeling. How do they, what's your sentiment towards technology? How are you respected in your organizations? How are you being engaged? Who do you have? What are your relationships like with HR? What are your relationships with your executives? What are your relationships with legal? How do you derive value? And what are the value factors in when you are deriving more value? Where are they coming from? Is it the relationship? Is it the investment? Is it, what is it? So we're really trying to go beyond the standard sort of research. And more importantly, this research is entirely anonymous. It's entirely untethered from any sponsorship. And there is no data given to any vendor. We anonymize this and put it out in the market. So year 2, right? Year 1, we hit about 700 and maybe 50 or so people, nice. 26 or 7 countries. This year, I think we only hit about maybe 650, but we went to 31 countries and we elevated a number of those, right? So we got more. Africa had a good turnout. Asia has got a good turnout. We did really well. So this is a really, I believe, one of the best samples of the global payroll community at the sentiment level to understand how they're feeling, right? Now, you'd ask, what did I learn? Well, there's probably 3 key things that I think I've learned this year. Some of it is not new, some of it is. I think the first thing is that the optimism and the engagement with AI has definitely popped, right? Where last year was a little bit lower and RPA and workflow automation was higher. AI jumped up, but workflow automation and RPA stayed up there, right? They're fundamentally got their eye on this, and the cautious optimism is kind of like everybody. There's got to be a trust factor around, can this thing actually perform to the dollar, to the penny, the way I do, and can I trust it? So trust, I think, is a major, major part of this. Okay. I think the conundrum is that there's this opportunity with innovation, but there's still this suppression of respect, right? And here's the disheartening thing that's got to stop. And this shit has to stop. One of the problems, and I'm going to play some of this back soon in this, is what's very concerning to me is that HR shows as one of the better, probably the best rated relationship that payroll has with the rest of your entities, right? Executive leaders is quite low, which we still have to work on. And I believe as you rate, we have data that shows as that number goes up with your executives, so too does the ROI and the outcomes, right? The problem is when you read across the qualitative data about the relationship with HR, it's incredibly abusive. They're very demeaning. They're very down. They speak down. There's a lot of you and us and them, right? There's pay discrepancies, massive pay gap discrepancies. Payroll sees it, right? There's so much that payroll is doing to exclude payroll. Ironically, as a group of people who are there to be inclusive and figure out a way to make the culture healthy. They have a toxic, abusive relationship with payroll, and that shit has to end. It has to end because it's being projected upward. And good news is that we have a lot more executives that are nurturing payroll and stepping up, going, I will take this under my wing, or championing payroll, that are meaning payroll's voice is getting louder and louder. And there's real work being done to actually change it. I'll be happy to talk to you about what's going on in Australia around this. But one of the things that concerns me is that the HR has got to get really, they got to have some self-reflecting conversations about the fact that the group of people they're abusing is the one organization in all I don't care what size company you are, that can get their C-suite put into prison for a mistake.
Right.
Fact. The only other place that can happen is over in accounting and maybe in a publicly traded firm.
What if I told you that your boss skydives, Tim in marketing is a magician, and Sam in accounting does sums in his head while standing on his hands? Seeing sides of the people you work with but never see, sides that inform and inspire their work and that can inspire yours, is what The Talent Show is all about. Email me, Tom Alexander, host of The Talent Show, at talentshow@backboneinc.com, and show us what you got. I look forward to seeing you on The Talent Show.
And that's got to go on for a little while before anybody's really going to say anything, right? If HR makes a mistake, someone's feelings get hurt, there's a lawsuit, and it never sees the light of day. It gets settled. If we screw up in payroll, it's game over, dude. If we don't pay the taxes, if we don't do what we're supposed to do, shit's going to get shut down. Someone's going to jail. And I've been on the other end of those letters and those seizures. It's real. And it happens at the smallest company and the biggest company. And that is something that I don't think most companies understand. I think they're operating in a danger that they don't see. And I posted this recently saying, like, look, you ever almost fallen off of a ladder but didn't realize it till after, like later on, you're like, oh man, I've dodged danger. That is what I just don't believe companies understand about HR and payroll right now, that if you're not doing it right, if you're not doing it at least with good intent and effort, you could get knocked out any minute. And it's going to be devastating if you do. So
Pete, let me let me bring these two things together, because I think you're touching on some pretty potent stuff here. You have this 5 pillars of payroll excellence, and I brought it up on an episode 3 or 4 episodes ago, one of our episodes.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, it's super helpful for us when we're talking to our customers, because they want to know, everybody talks about the future of payroll, but how do I get there, right? And these are pillars that you build, right? So, all of our listeners, or most of our listeners anyways, have a very strong compliance-oriented center of excellence, that core payroll battleship, if you will, that's SAP payroll, right? So let's leave that one, that core first pillar aside. What are the other 4 pillars are going to help keep the payroll person from getting shit on if that's what's happening by their HR team?
Yeah. So look, the 5 pillars are essentially my point of view on, and I would argue that it's probably one of only few frameworks in the market. There's a lot of people that talk, but nobody's got a point of view, right? I have a point of view because I've lived it, and I want to see it change. And one of the problems that I have with HR and payroll is we whip them and we say, be more strategic.
Right.
What the hell does that even mean, right? It's like, what does that mean? Win, you know what I mean? Like, what does winning even look like? So I said, well, what should payroll be producing as a strategic value output? And that's where the 5 pillars came from. It's rooted in exactly that. Compliance center of expertise. And that's the thing that most people know payroll for, but don't respect them for. And that's the start, right? Being a compliance center of expertise, keeping an orb around the business to protect them along the way, right? Then it becomes, now there's also the modern, facilitating the modern pay experience. That's the second one. That pay experience is so much more than payroll, but payroll is ultimately the facilitator and the face. They're the point man through the door, right? And that includes total comp, equity, inclusiveness of the equity, transparency of that, the ability for me to choose when I'm paid, the ability for me to have financial wellness learning and capabilities, and just the fundamental experience around my pay, right? Not payroll, but pay. Right. Payroll has to be the stewards of that. Then I think it's also about helping the company navigate talent access anywhere. You've got to be able, again, back to that compliance center of expertise, the company has to work, legal, payroll, HR has to work in lockstep when the company says, we've got to go get a resource somewhere, or we want to be somewhere tomorrow.
Agility.
How do we do that, right? Maybe that's mergers, maybe that's whatever. That's where payroll can be a facilitator of that part of it as well, part of the business as well. And then there's the 2 pieces that I think are the most valuable and the most org agility driven. And that is, 1, being a consultant to the business, right? Being a strategic advisor, being Deloitte to your business to be able to have them knock on your door and say, hey, I want to do this. What does this mean? What should we be thinking about? Proactive engagement, right? Using payroll's data in concert with other data to then pair that and try and predict and see around the next corner. And that's the 5th pillar, and that's enabling org agility. But payroll's got to have the infrastructure of people, process, and tech, and investment and invested leaders. That's another thing we test in our research. How well are the leaders investing in you? But more importantly, are they invested, right? It's one thing to put money down on the table. It's another thing to actually reach across the aisle, so to speak, and pull you in and say, let me champion you, help me, help me, help you, help me. And so I think that org agility part of it is what the outcome is of those other 4 pillars working in concert for payroll to be able to deliver all that. And so one of the things we're doing now with the PPCI is we published that POV last year. Now this year we're measuring it. How well is the payrolls of the world actually performing this? And it's very, very low. But we are coming across some great examples and some stellar stories out there that I think are really cool. We're bringing them to our podcast.
That's great.
Yeah. And Pete, so one, you've been dropping some amazing insights and knowledge to the audience. So I love that. Earlier, you're talking about some crazy shit around payroll with like all the things you've seen, right? You've had an amazing career. You've seen it all the space that we're in, right? You've been a leader and responsible for multiple orgs, and you also work for different multinational vendors, right? Yeah. So we're curious about it. I'm sure our audience is also curious about, like, what's the biggest nightmare story that you've seen in payroll that may or may not have made the news?
That's my line, man. That's my line, bro. What? Come on, man. No.
All right. So look, I'm gonna I'll just tell you this story. And actually, this one I don't think was actually. Well, okay, let me explain how Hollywood works, right? So most of Hollywood, they are not necessarily employees in the same construct that you and I would understand, right? So for example, I did some work with Warner Brothers once, And a great example was, say, George Clooney. George Clooney might be a director, a writer, a production company, not George Clooney, but whatever smokehouse production or whatever he has, where he might have done something else, right? And he could also be an employee of the studio in some roundabout way. So you might have George Clooney in the system multiple ways, none of which are actually standard employees, and a lot of which are tied to a union with a health and welfare requirement, and then ultimately some various different calculations for what they were doing from a time and attendance type perspective, right? So we could be cutting checks, to people who aren't employees, but we're processing it through payroll because there are ramifications for taxes and things we have to treat as that, right? So in Hollywood, you have this sort of weird blend of, I've been telling the vendors for years, if you want to know how to solution for the gig economy, you need to go to the back lot of Hollywood. I actually think that's the future of work. We could talk about that another day. But anyway, the point is we were converting everything to SAP, right? And this is not a knock on SAP. There were, we were going through all of our testing and conversions and whatever. And long story short, a 1 penny check came out to, I think it was Jimmy Kimmel himself, right? Yeah, whatever. It was like a residual or something. So it might have actually been accurate for whatever reason. It was just a penny, right? The point is, it probably cost more than 10x to get that penny printed, but it was some anomaly that we didn't count for in testing, whatever. It was just something stupid. Long story short, we of course at Disney, right? Change management. We accompanied everything with a letter, right, to the employee to explain. Well, someone sent out a letter with this 1 penny check, or after the 1 penny check, to explain it, and it was just riddled with acronyms from our project. Okay, Jimmy Kimmel, you can probably find this. Jimmy Kimmel goes on the show. He's new. This is a new show now. I'm talking maybe year one or two of his show. Okay. Yep. He goes on and he reads the letter and he talks about it, and he basically says, "I'm pretty sure that the Disney company is deploying SAP to weed out the stupid people." It was the worst nightmare. For us, it was just like worst nightmare, right? Worst advertising. Keep in mind, we're going through a shared services bill where we're taking power and control away from all these entities who had long had power and control over their own HR and payroll. And all the while, Enron had happened. So now we had something called management audit that everyone's head was spinning. So we were the absolute devil already, right? So, I mean, quickly, we showed our value very quickly. And that's a whole other conversation we could have around how we turn people on to stakeholders, investing, going, hey, let's do more by way of data, right? Showing data. And so the point it was just a blunder on our part. Wow. We communicated poorly. We didn't test properly. It was absolutely a learning and change management. But as embarrassing as it was fun. So.
Yeah, but isn't it like, again, and this goes back to why we even have this show, right? I mean, I said in the beginning is to shine a light on payroll people. Yeah. And again, we have to wear so many different hats. Payroll, people are not making sure testing is done properly, new tech, making sure everything is correct. And again, mistakes will happen, right? But that one mistake, while everything, the 100 other thousands of checks that you just printed during that payroll run, gets that's what gets shot.
Made it into the hands of the one guy that could put it in front of the whole world at 11 o'clock at night.
But to be honest, this is where, hats off to truly the payroll baddies out there who are making sure people are getting paid, because it's a thankless job. It really is.
It is, man.
You make sure everybody's getting paid, and you have to be a therapist sometimes to people. You have to be a problem solver. You have to be everything to everybody.
I keep saying, payroll leaders and HR leaders are business leaders that happen to sit in payroll and HR, and they are some of the best mental athletes in the entire organization. Payroll especially runs laps around HR. They have to know everything about HR's processes backwards and forwards. And they absolutely probably know more about the business than people give them credit for, just because they've got their finger on I mean, think about it. Every people decision in the business, in any business, big or small, ends up in payroll's doorstep, right? One way or the other. 100%. If it involves a human being, it's going to involve them, and I think that's something that we don't get enough credit for.
As we're getting closer, again, one of the thoughts that I was thinking about, but everybody told me not to ask you, was which is the best payroll system out there. But again, you know what? I'm not going to ask it because we already know it's SAP Payroll. So we're going to move on to the next question. So with everything you are seeing, you are on the forefront of, you get to talk to all these new tech companies in payroll, administrators, payroll professionals. Where, like, how would you sum up, where do you see the future of this going, both from a tech side, but also from from a services and other side? I know you kind of already mentioned some of this in your index and all this other stuff, but again, to me, one thing that I've always resonated with me, and we do it in our company, is have a chief payroll officer, because we really think that's important. And obviously we are a payroll services company, but we need that. But to me, I think it's an important role that we could see everywhere else. But really interested to hear your point of view. All this.
Well, look, here's my thoughts on this. I have some models on this we could go over, but I think let's break this down from a people, process, and tech perspective, right? Let's start with the people. I think that if you look at, and I have a presentation on this, if you go look at the World Economic Forum, they have a nice quadrant on the skills that organizations are most leaning into over the next 5 years, investing in reskilling. It's all soft. It's all leadership, adaptability, conflict resolution, negotiation, analytic thinking, tech, all of the stuff you'd want in a really good modern day leader, right? It's soft stuff. It's emotional intelligence. When I look at that, when I look at a lot of the things on there, adaptability, attention to detail, it reads like a job description for payroll or HR. I always hired people for attitude and emotional intelligence over their skill. I can teach you payroll. I could teach you HR. I can't teach you to question and negotiate and lead and be creative and think outside the box. Like, those are things that take time to develop. So I think when you look at that, I also think this way about the military as well. The people who have the creativity and have the adaptability and the ability to learn, unlearn, relearn, learn again, those people are payroll and HR leaders all day long. They're going to thrive with AI. They're already intuitive. They're already questioning. They're already used to adaptability. Like, I just think they're really going to thrive. So I think the people are going to be fine if they want to lean into it. You're going to have people who get hit by the bus. That's the way it always is, right? Folks that don't evolve. It's just the way it is. Right. Those that want to, and that's why I think you're starting to see, these leaders rise to some higher levels. I just did a podcast recently with Monica Miller that I think is one of the most excellent examples of strategic payroll I've ever seen. She has embedded data scientists. They're talking about multi-million-dollar cost takeouts over years from just leakage, not reducing heads. We're talking leakage from time on a half million person payroll. That's a massive, massive impact they can make. And so she's doing things that I'm writing about as the future already. And there are other payroll leaders getting that. We're starting to see more of that. Some of these bigger enterprises are starting to wake up and realize they've got to engage payroll in a better way. And one of the things I love, we could talk about this, Todd, I think I'd like your opinion on this, is I'm starting to see payroll get aligned in some different places than finance and HR. And I'm actually looking for some leaders willing to talk about this. I've got a few already that are aligning under total rewards. So you're starting to see a payroll with total rewards of benefits and comp all in one little COE. I think that's a really great idea. It's creating a lot of just synergy between what is the pay experience, right? And some are even talking about maybe reporting to some other places. And that's fascinating, right? We're now starting to think about payroll, which I think is really helpful. Yep. So let's now talk about like the technology. The technology is going to empower those people to get there, right? It's going to give them the time. Like we've had for so long, payroll has been down there rowing, not really with a motor, so they could focus on other things. And now that we have the ability to say, well, all the ticking and tying and all the running around, getting files and reminding people to put their time in and fixing this and fixing that and unscrewing screwed up map GLs, all of that can be put to the sides for AI to go run down and surface back to me the things I need to be worried about while I go and create and be adaptable and get ready for that next merger and help the business decide where we go and how we do it and all that sort of thing. We haven't given them that opportunity to be those athletes, and that's what I think the technology is going to provide. And then I think on the process side of things, I think you're going to see, just my prediction, I think eventually, very long term, I think we will get to autonomous payroll in the sense that AI will do the work and payroll will audit, review, consent, just like a clerk, of the old days would process payroll, bring it to the manager would read and certify, all the old ways. that'll be the same thing, but with agentic AI. And I don't see any reason why you couldn't have your payroll leaders being much more of like a retained team that is monitoring over a mix of agents and vendors and whatever this, the case might be to complement their strengths and weaknesses. I also think that you're going to see with digital money movement and continuous calc and, native engines like you guys have at SAP, you're going to see the ability for companies to say, why do we need a pay cycle? Pay cycles are somewhat arbitrary anyway. They're manufacturing based. We're not in a manufacturing age anymore. It doesn't make any sense, right? Just like the 5-day work week doesn't necessarily always make sense, right? Mm-hmm. So why do we need a pay cycle, especially with earned wage access? People are drawing money anyway. Why can't I put my hours in, it calculated, pays me, I'm on my way. And if the majority of us end up becoming independent contractors in some way, unless, predictably that's what it seems like we're headed towards, is more of an agile mix of talent, I think you're going to have a lot of people coming and going, a lot of skills moving fast where same day payments, just like in Hollywood, are the expectation. And that's how the law out there works. But I think that's going to happen too. So I think the payroll cycle and process is going to die eventually, long term. And I think payroll is going to become much more of a data center, a compliance and data center.
Love it.
Because it won't be processing, it'll be thinking, and it'll be hopefully helping HR and IT or legal and others make good decisions around what the company's trying to do as a think tank, just like any other organization. So that's kind of where I see it.
Awesome.
Yeah, super interesting. All right, Pete, I know you mentioned the episode you did with Monica. So, we're big fans of your podcast. We've called it out in the past, HR Payroll 2.0. So obviously we follow it. Tell us a little bit more about that for our listeners.
Yeah. And by the way, man, I'm excited. We're a Work Defined peers now. Congratulations, you guys have joined the Work Defined network. But shout out, man, that's awesome. Work Defined is great. They've been a great home for us. We're in, I would say, we're in our third year, and we're going to a new level of growth. Personally, man, we've got what we are, man, is really authentic education, right? I'm an analyst. I got my head in the clouds. Let's be honest. I see what's coming. I get all excited. And Julie, my partner, Julie Fernandez, is a legendary sourcing advisor and transformation strategy consultant. She and I negotiated deals back in the day at IBM and TPI when she was there. And she kind of keeps things level set with what's really going on the ground. So we come at that in that way, and we report on the news that's going on, the positivity in the market, the great stories from practitioners. And the goal of our show is really about education, man. It's free, ad-free, authentic education that is all about trying to help you think how to think about these things, not what to think, how to think about this, give you examples of people that have achieved it, and show you the positivity and the things that are coming out of the market that you should be excited about, mergers, acquisitions, new products, and how to engage those things. So we're really all about that education. We're trying to take that to the next level. So come join us, man.
I love it. Yes.
Awesome. No,
we appreciate it. But I'm so excited you guys are on Work Defined, man. This is so good. Such good news, man.
We're excited about it too, man. We wouldn't have been there without you, actually. So I know you kind of gave us that initial push in that direction. Right. We talked to the guys, and so we're excited about it too.
Work Defined's great, man. It's run by Ryan Leary and William Tencup. Sorry, and it's all work related and HR and compliance, just everything, man. So if you've got an interest out there, go check out Work Defined. There's a lot of great.
In fact, both of our listeners may have seen a commercial for another podcast on this podcast for the first time.
Probably so.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's some celebrities on that network, man.
Absolutely.
It's good stuff.
Hey, this was a lot of fun, right? And on behalf of all the payroll baddies out there, I want to thank you for coming out and on today's podcast. A lot of good knowledge that you dropped, enlightening our audience. And to your point, we're looking forward to seeing all the collaboration that we're going to do in the future, as well as the findings from the survey. And then to all of our audiences that are listening, watching, right? Be sure to check out, Pete's podcast. One thing I want to call out, some events that are coming up. So SHRM, that's the first one. Next week in San Diego. By the time you guys see this, it may have already happened, depending on when we drop this. But an exciting conference to a lot of things that we talked about earlier. If you guys are looking for peers, right, from a payroll perspective, you want to talk about how other companies are doing and transforming their HR with payroll and everything, right? This is the conference to be at.
Get your gold chain. Show up and come get your gold chain.
It's going to be there.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be there.
Daddy.
Come see me.
Daddy.
So, with that being said, everyone, please like, subscribe, LinkedIn, YouTube, we're everywhere. You know where to find us. Thank you so much once again for listening in, and thank you so much once again, Pete.
Cheers.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate you. Keep doing your thing.
Keeping it hype, doing payroll right. We don't need no stripe. Work they calling y'all rock stars, ain't that cute? Dave Force, UKG, y'all still in pursuit. But we baddies in the game, bringing more to the loop. Yo, baddies bring the clarity, got clarity in sight. We bringing payroll tech, making it right, spreading the word. From S4 to the cloud, Daddy's got the vision, making payroll proud. SAP payroll is king, we wearing the crown. Those companies starting with P, y'all know the name. Try to keep up, but it's not the same. Tech on lock, we automating the flow. No more headaches, we let that payroll glow. Innovating daily, got the future on deck. Payroll baddies, running it, showing respect. So all the payroll baddies, you know who you are. Join the cause, let's take it far. All you baddies out there, it's time to rise. Join the movement, no compromise. Keep your rock stars, we're classy, no charades. Payroll baddies, rain and fire, get paid. Payroll baddies, rain and fire, get paid.